Welcome in to the Fantasy Football Forge. It is week 2 running back rankings that we will be looking at today. A couple of notes at the top of the show. First of all, so I don't forget this, Kenneth Gainwell is not expected to be playing. I was waiting on that kind of news from today before doing this video. So that is the expectation right now. As soon as he is ruled out, or just before kickoff, make sure if you have an IR spot to put him in your IR spot so he doesn't get stuck on your roster, because in at least a lot of leagues, you can't move a guy once that game has started into your IR spot. Don't forget to do that, so that way you can pick up somebody that can help you, or a flyer, or something like that. Second note, you can find my complete rankings. I'm going to go through 30 running backs here, a few tiers, maybe like 4 tiers of running backs. And that's obviously not the complete rankings, so you can find them up on the website, www.theffforge.com. This is a living sheet that I use in here that gets updated throughout the week, all the way up until Sunday, that you have access to viewing all the time. And yes, changes will happen based on news that comes out. Also, talking about Sunday mornings, 1 hour prior to kickoff, you can come and visit me for all of your start-sit needs, or you can just hang out, talk a little bit of football. It doesn't get overly busy in here, so there's other kinds of chat that goes on. It's not just me talking, answering questions the entirety of the time. At least not yet. Someday we'll get there. Now, let's recap how I did week 1 with my love-ems, my fade-ems, and if I had any DFS opinions, which I'm not positive what I said last week. I assume I probably gave you some sort of DFS, this guy or that guy, but I'm fairly certain that they didn't really pay off. I don't know that they were horrible. I have a few ideas of who it might have been, and I just don't recall. I wasn't about to watch the whole video for it. I am doing a better job of now keeping track of what I said the previous week for these things, so that way I can keep the transparency going. And as far as the love-ems, I had the Jacksonville Jaguars running backs as love-ems. Both of them, technically, I was pretty much correct on them. As far as both my rankings, I think between the two of them, I think I was off by 1 spot with my rankings. But it feels like we left a little bit, hanging there. I don't know. I don't know that I want to take a complete W on that. And then we had J.K. Dobbins, which it sure appeared like that was going to be a successful love-em take, but unfortunately the injury occurred, so we will never know. Then as far as the fade-ems go, I believe, must have nailed it here. We have Najee Harris and Dameon Pierce. I didn't write down where they finished, but neither of them finished too well, too high up. Pretty much right on both of them, I think, ranking-wise as well there. So, a good job, I would say, overall here for the running backs. It could have done a little bit better with the love-ems, but part of that's not my fault. Now let's get to the rankings, and just want to point out over here on the right-hand side, this ECR difference column. That is the difference between my ranking and the ECR's ranking as of Tuesday evening. So if it's a positive number, that means I was above the ECR by like 5 spots for Travis Etienne. The ECR would have been running back 8 there. And if it's a negative number, then I am ranking them lower than the ECR. The expert consensus ranking, or the average of a number of experts that contribute to Fantasy Pros website with their rankings. So this is my first tier for the running backs this week. We have Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Travis Etienne Jr., Bijan Robinson, and Austin Eckler. I'm high up again on the Jacksonville running backs, going up against Kansas City. Could be the highest single scoring game of the week. So I like that. Based on where I've ranked Travis Etienne for the first 2 weeks, my preseason take on him was too low, but there is time. On to my second tier of running backs. We're still really in must-start territory. My RB6 this week is Nick Chubb, followed by Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, if he is healthy and going, and there aren't at least too many limitations on him expected for this weekend, then he would be a must-start for me. Ramondre Stevenson still in that category, especially given the matchup. I like that quite a bit. And Kenneth Walker, the turd, going up against Detroit. You like that. So all All guys that there's not a chance that I am sitting them. Then we have a tier of running backs who are close by, but they're not necessarily must starts for one reason or another this week. Starting off with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. The LA Rams just made the Seahawks the 6th best matchup for running backs in week 1. That was the Rams running backs, which we really don't. That's Cam Akers and Kyron Williams. So, kind of like the matchup here. I still prefer the upside of Jahmyr Gibbs over the safety of David Montgomery. But as you can see, even by ECR, the ECRs, I'm basically the same as them, just flipped. So whatever, if you happen to have them both, shame on you for doing that to yourself. But I like Jahmyr Gibbs. Or you could play them both. Why not? Then Joe Mixon I have in at running back 15, going up against Baltimore. Really, really rough defense there for him. So, based on week 1 and last year, as far as efficiency goes, I'm just not too high up on the outcome, but you pretty much have to play him. Same with Alexander Madison. You pretty much have to play him. I don't love this matchup against Philadelphia, but once you see the rest of the rankings, it's like, who would you play ahead of them? So I believe that you pretty much have to play him in a potentially high-scoring matchup here against Philadelphia on Thursday night. On to my running back 17, tier 4 here with Dameon Pierce, James Cook, Miles Sanders, Rachaad White, and Isaiah Pacheco in at RB 21. And we see Dameon Pierce going from a fade 'em to a love 'em, switching teams this week, going up against Indianapolis. I like that quite a bit. I expect this to be a much closer type of game than last week. Looking for a big play and some better efficiency from Dameon Pierce. Hopefully Singletary can get a little bit of a rest this game and keep his legs fresh for most of the rest of the season when they'll need him while they're playing from behind more. Then James Cook, the snap share was not bad for him last week. He was pretty decent at 59%, and I like the matchup here. I'm looking for Buffalo to get it right in week 2, maybe even come out with a bit of a vengeance after they're going to be taking a public pummeling all week. And I think that James Cook has a good chance to be a part of that. So I'm obviously, as you can see, I'm high up on him, 7 spots higher than the ECR, but I'm really liking the matchup this week. And then with Rachaad White as my second love him. Actually, before we get to that, I originally at my RB19 had Kenneth Gainwell, and I do not have any of the Philadelphia running backs making it currently into my top 30 that we're going through. So wanted to talk about them just real quickly. As far as Rashad Penny goes, he is my favorite without having much confidence in why he's my favorite. But he is my favorite. I do think that he is the guy that comes in and gets the bulk of the workload on the ground in the absence of Kenny Gainwell. But given what happened last week and him being sat, maybe that's not the case at all. I currently have him behind the Denver running backs, both of them, back-to-back, and then ahead of the back-to-back Baltimore Ravens running backs. I'd rather take that risk than what I almost know will be truly a split with those Baltimore Ravens running backs, though that matchup for Baltimore is not the worst, but that's where I slid him in without any further information. I think we'll get some more further information maybe before kickoff time. I don't know. That could be a top secret information, though. So we'll see. Hopefully something comes out. Because then, and not too far, right behind the Baltimore Ravens running backs, I have DeAndre Swift ranked 36th, and I have Boston Scott, who could be the lead back in the absence here. He could be where I'm thinking Rashad Penny should be, and at my running back 43, because I don't want to completely ignore that. I have him right behind A.J. Dillon, which is, of course, a ranking that is currently assuming that Aaron Jones is going to be playing, and ahead of the guys like Tank Bigsby, Jalen Warren, some of those guys who are clear number 2s, but do have some little upside to them. Boston Scott would have more upside if we know nothing going into that game. There is a chance that he could be the guy. The 1A there, and DeAndre Swift probably a 1B. We'll see. So that leads into my RB20 here, Rachaad White. Gave him a love him tag going up against Chicago. Chicago's defense doesn't instill a lot of faith. That's really what it comes down to. But this is risky. I am giving Rachaad White, and I think apparently a lot of rankers, one last chance here to prove himself. Again, in this matchup, he should be able to do that, right? So we will see, but I'm giving him a love him tag. We'll see how that works out. Then Isaiah Pacheco in at my running back 21 going up against Jacksonville. You got to like that. So can't argue with people being a little bit higher than RB21 on him. The reason that he is lower for me just comes down to what I think a lot of people, I really haven't heard anybody else talk about it. The fact that, as far as I could tell, it seemingly was like this throughout the entirety of the game. CEH was in on every other drive. They were splitting drives between him and Isaiah Pacheco. I think CEH might have sat out or had limited practice to start out the week here, but assuming he's healthy, that concerns me a little bit. It might be kind of an every other drive thing for them all season long. I think that's possible, and so I'm just a little bit hesitant to go too high on Isaiah Pacheco, but it's a good matchup. So I still want to start him if I have him. And that's going to bring us down to the last tier of running backs here, starting off with a Fatum at my running back 22. Let's just read these off. At running back 23, we have Tyler Algier, followed by Jamal Williams, Brian Robinson Jr., James Conner, Delvin Cook, Breece Hall, Khalil Herbert, and to wrap it up, at my running back 30, I have Najee Harris. So Raheem Mostert, I'm a little bit higher than ECR on him. Apparently, I'm not really high on him, though. I'm concerned. I feel like he's kind of a must-start RB2. Like he makes the RB2 list here with the top 24, but he's not really a must-start play if you have some options ahead of him. That New England defense is a formidable run defense. The defense as a whole is a formidable defense, and we know can limit good offenses. And if they do not deactivate Devon Achane prior to the game, I do have a little bit of concern about him eating into Mostert's role. But it's still the Miami offense, and he's still the starting running back regardless of all that. So there's still some great upside, and essentially what we saw last week is very much in the realm of possibility there. I don't know what their game plan is. I think it could be the same game plan as they had against Los Angeles Chargers, or they might kind of try to match New England and slow the pace down, and maybe they do try to pound the ball a little bit and set up like play action type stuff. I don't know. I really don't know what their plan is. Then Tyler Algier in at my running back 23 here going up against the Green Bay Packers. I have him 8 spots ahead of the ECR. Pretty bold take, but I don't think that last week was fluky in terms of the usage, and I'm not convinced that the Green Bay Packers run defense can keep this rushing attack at bay. Green Bay's defense did allow the 5th most fantasy points to running backs last week, but I'm not really, that's not the reason that I'm high up on Tyler Algier. I thought that that was the result in large part because of garbage time more than anything. Still, that garbage time is also a possibility this week. In this matchup, it's possible that Green Bay could beat up on Atlanta in a similar fashion where it really takes until the second half for things to break apart to last week how they beat Chicago, and then maybe we get a bunch of garbage time for the Atlanta running back. So I don't know. That game, any game flow, any winner would not surprise me there. Then last up, we have Khalil Herbert going up against Tampa Bay, and until he's not, he is the starting running back. And while they're in the game, he gets the bulk of the work with Deonta Foreman spelling him some. I don't think that the end result of this backfield's usage was highly accurate to the actual usage for like the first half to 3 quarters last week. When you look at the first 3 quarters, what you would find is that Khalil Herbert had 3 out of 3 runs, 2 out of 3 runs, 0 out of 4, 1 out of 1, 2 out of 2 through the first 3 quarters, which is about 62% of the work, whereas his final snap share shows him at 36% of the snap share. He was outsnapped by Roschon Johnson, who had 39% of the snap share at the end of the game, despite Roschon Johnson not really receiving any work until the Bears were down 24-6 outside of a single 3rd and 18 play after being down 17-6. That said, I don't know how safe Khalil's work is because Roschon Johnson looked better than him. But I don't think the change happens in week 2, but this could become a split backfield as soon as week 2, whereas I think it was pretty much a normal workload for Khalil Herbert compared to other starting running backs around the league in week 1 until it wasn't. So, and until it wasn't, we could also see Chicago behind in a lot of games this year, if they look like they did in week 1, outside of the first half. But I think that was a little bit of a weird game flow game. I'm not taking too much away from it for either team quite yet. So that is it. No, Najee Harris in that running back 30, he is a fadeum for me going up against Cleveland. We saw Cleveland look dominant last week. I don't want to mess with that. We've seen Najee not look dominant for some time, and we saw Jaylen Warren take a fair amount of work, especially passing work, from Najee throughout the preseason, and some of that happened in week 1 already. So I am once again going to be fading Najee Harris. I believe he was a fade in week 1. He makes the list again. Raheem Mostert was basically a love. He makes the fade list. Rashad White was, I don't know. And then Dameon Pierce is switch hitting as well. So thank you very, very much. If you made it this far for the rankings, then please like the video. Or you could comment on it. Let me know what you think. Let me know where I screwed up here. And if you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Bye-bye.